All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our second to last, our penultimate event of the spring. May is wild for all of us, and it's also in the Scribente world. So we are here for the Write Like a Mother's Day reading with Jenny Case, Michele Evans, and Christina Rivera. And I'm going to share my screen to go through our whole Scribente spiel before I introduce our amazing authors. All right, so we are Scribente Maternum. If you're new to us, we are a community of writers who identify as mothers, where we embrace the tension between motherhood and writing. We see our children as both the constant inspiration and the perpetual distraction in our lives. We offer virtual events like this and in-person workshops. We have a virtual community on Substack, and we have retreats. And then we also have regional chapters. So on our Substack, we have all of that listed, and I'll mention a little bit more about that as we go on. So we have one more event this spring, which is with Danielle L'Souza on how to turn motherhood into your creative superpower. And that is next week, Wednesday, May 28th. So make sure to sign up for that after you're done here. And then we have 3 retreats in the next year, which is really exciting. This is the most that we've ever had in a year, and so we are thrilled. So we have our Sedona, Arizona retreat in October, and we just have 3 early bird tickets remaining and 5 tickets total. So get on it. These sell out, and so we have just a few more left. And it's going to be beautiful. October is the best time to be in Sedona. It's amazing. And then we have our first international retreat in Bordeaux, France, next February. And we will be hosting an information session in the coming months. So look out for that, because I think it's something that folks will want to know a little bit more about, what they're going to get from it. But it's an all-inclusive retreat for an entire week in Bordeaux, France, with other writer moms. And then we are just recently confirmed our spring 2026 event on the Sonoma coast of California. So if you are in the Bay Area or in California, it's very convenient, but this is a great place for anybody to go and just retreat. And we'll have more information about that soon, and registration will open likely in September. So as I mentioned, we have a Substack. So we have occasional posts and updates. We also publish writing by writer moms. So if you have something about an essay about motherhood that you want to share with the world, please submit it to us. You can just submit it to us at hello@scribentematernum.com. We actually have a couple of these coming out in the next coming weeks. I have a couple of writer moms who are guest posting for us. And then we also have discussion and writing prompts. We have extra benefits for paid subscribers, including links to our full library of events that are really only available to paid subscribers or people who registered for that event. So that's pretty cool. And then also on our Substack page, you can find at the top of the menu information about our regional chapters. We do not have regional chapters in every single place. If you don't see your place, email us at hello@scribentematernum.com if you want to get one started, or you can join the one near you. And then this event is linked also to our Mother's Day fundraising campaign. We have a You Deserve to Be Here fund that goes directly to people who want to attend our retreats that can't fit the entire bill, because, I think a lot of times these kind of retreats and events fit into this kind of wellness, very wealthier, privileged group, but we want to make sure that these are inclusive. And so we try to support mothers who might not be able to pay for the entire thing. And so this fundraiser goes directly to that fund to support these mothers. And just like every good NPR lover, we have tote bags and thank you gifts, like this amazing mug and journals and a bumper sticker, of course. So you can donate at the QR code. It's also on our website and all of that, but we'll also be sending the link out to donate directly after this event. You can follow us everywhere. We are also writelikeamother.com and scribentematernum.com, so they'll go to both of those. And now I'm going to introduce you to our amazing readers and writers, writers and readers. And I'm going to do the official reading of the bios, which as always feels a little bit awkward, especially as the author itself. So, but I think it's amazing to do this because you can see just how incredible these people are and why we are so excited to bring them here. So I'm going to go in the order of who's reading, which we talked about first. We're going to have Christina go first. Christina Rivera is the author of My Oceans, Essays of Water, Whales, and Women. Her work has won a Pushcart Prize, the John Burroughs Nature Essay Award, and she has appeared in Orion, The Cut, the Kenyon Review, and Terrain.org, among other places. Christina credits the fragmentation of her writing to her 2 young children and is also the grateful recipient of creative residencies at Millet Arts, is that how you say it? Craig Arden and the Wellstone Center. You can learn more about Christina at her website, christinarivera.com, and that's also her social media up there. And now I'm going to introduce Michele Evans. Michelle's going to be our second reader. She is a 5th generation Washingtonian, that's District of Columbia Washingtonian, coming from a Washington State Washingtonian. She's a writer, teacher, and advisor for Unbound, an award-winning high school literary magazine. This Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominee, Watering Hole Fellow, and winner of the ASP Bulletin Poetry Contest, studied at Smith College, King's College London, and the Graduate School at the University of Maryland. Her poems have appeared in Artemis Journal, Maryland Literary Review, Yellow Arrow Journal, Mid-Atlantic Review, Spoken Black Girl Magazine, Sky Island Journal, and elsewhere. Pearl, which is out now, is her first full-length poetry collection. And then last but not least is Jenny Case, or Jennifer Case. She grew up along the river valleys of Minnesota in a family that took weekend backpacking trips on the Superior Hiking Trail. The North Shore's red rock, pine, and lichen have continued to resonate with her, even after moving to Nebraska, upstate New York, and Arkansas. Jennifer's writing explores issues related to place, environment, home, family, and motherhood. Her work has appeared in journals such as Orion, North American Review, Prairie Schooner, and Michigan Quarterly Review. She is the recipient of a Breadloaf Bakelist Scholarship and Stone Canoe's 2014 Allen and Narell Galson Prize in Fiction. She's the author of 2 books, We Are Animals, on the nature and politics of motherhood, and Sawbill, A Search for Place. Okay, I'm going to stop share. Oh, hi, Milo. What was really cool about reading those all back to back is how much overlap there was in the style of writing and also the awards that you've received. And so we could not have planned this more perfectly, I think. And also your connection in writing about motherhood, of course, which is why we invited you all. So let's get started. So how this is going to work for everybody who is attending, we are going to have each of the readers read. They'll do a few minutes of reading from their work, and then we're going to ask some questions. Rachel and I will moderate a Q&A, and then if you have any questions that are bubbling up about writing, motherhood, the writing life, even, any questions that come up, feel free to hold on to them, and we'll have time at the end to go over those. So Christina, we'll have you go first.
Yay, thank you. So excited to be here. I'm so happy to share this panel with you all. And Yes, I'm reading from my oceans, and I am going to read a piece about the power of bringing a group of women together. And I read a section of this for a women's book club this week, and it was so fun to be, I don't know, just in that circle and paying tribute to the power of that circle. So it is like a listicle, like a how-to. And so they are numbered elements. And I am going to jump in with number 3. And the title of the piece is How to Host a Pod of Women in Water. So 3, pick people, start small, dig through your life and find a pod of friends ripe for this experience, which they all are. Pick friends who have seen you cry or throw up or get so angry you broke something or made you laugh when you wanted to die. Those people. These friends will not be perfect, and if they are, do not invite them, except for perfect is a construct meant to be broken, and water is great for holding the shattered. Pick friends with baggage, friends who have at times been inappropriate, annoying, flaky, or exposed their deep flaws. Maybe she didn't answer the phone for months because she had a new lover. Or maybe you were abroad and didn't answer, didn't call when her best old dog friend died. Here's what you're looking for: people who will show up and get in the water with you because you remember a story about sperm whales, whales who were inclined to live in small pods, but when they faced near extinction in the 1800s, did something different. The small pods they collected, the matriarchs of these pods, they somehow communicated, maybe saying a need to merge. They boosted their size and alliance and defense by congregating into extensive herds of more than 100. But we're organizing humans, so let's start small. I'm going to skip ahead to step 5. Before you get in the water, give each person space to talk. Ask each woman to name what she needs and what she brings. Let the woman who has a story migrate to the woman who needs to hear it. One woman will offer divorce advice. Another will need help with a defiant toddler. A few will want to talk about sex or death. Others will need space to discuss the isms they battle with their employers or their boss, employees or their boss. 3 will cluster to figure out how to transition out of jobs they hate or away from lovers they fear. Someone will want a very quiet companion for a very long walk. One will need to get high. Others, a bottle of wine passed by its neck back and forth in the woods. One person will definitely want to burn something. Many will need to laugh until they cry or cry until they laugh. One woman, when she describes what she needs, will stomp her foot like a wild horse's hoof. When she does, all the women will feel it. Their feet will twitch. 6, get in the water. Watch the women grasp their own bodies in a shiver. Observe as they point one foot into the hot spring, then another. See how they fall into the water's embrace. How eager they are for warmth, for relief, to be held. Watch how their chins tip up, their eyes close, their arms fall back and open, dragging in the water behind them. The women in water, they will huddle. The oceans of whales and women are both vast. The distances they must travel to connect, immense. So slow down in these first minutes of immersion. Feel your bodies slip between the bodies of other women, your shoulders touching, gliding seamlessly with other girl bodies. Remember what you read about sperm whales, that they have little permanent in the sea except for each other, that they communicate in patterned sonar clicks, codas that can vibrate through thousands of miles of water, that when they share space, they touch each other a lot. They nuzzle. Knees will touch in the pools. Thighs will glide past each other. Hands will reach for shoulders. The women will twist as they laugh until they are touching each other's faces like they touch their own in the mirror. Bodies will bead with sweat. Bodies will clasp, wave, breach in reunion. One woman will get too hot. She'll pull herself onto the ledge and roll onto her spine on the cold stone. She'll bask with the sun on her steaming skin, eyes closed but listening. And you'll know she's listening when her chest and knees bend together as she laughs at the confession of another in the pool. The confession of a mother who serves cereal for dinner. The confession of another who reads erotica before bed. The confession of one who let her son pee in the bushes of a church. This is why we migrate and collect. for the shared wet skin of confessions that strip us to likeness, for a place where women's bodies in a seamless nuzzle can say what needs to be felt, for the laughter that wakes what sleeps inside, because there is no laughter like the laughter of a woman shaking off the sleep of laundry and carpools and interrupted dreams. Leave all the babies home. A location with unstable Wi-Fi and no cell service helps. Francis Weller said, "What we need in these times is attuned and attentive individuals who can sense the distress we are feeling and offer us assurance, soothing and safe touch to help us remodulate our inner states." This holding environment is a form of ritual ground, initiation that occurs outside the familiar landscape of family and friends, the daily rounds of meals and work. It occurs in a time outside time. These are outside time days, time outside time days. The few in the life of a modern woman in which her sentences and sentiments are free to roam, to run on, to flow into oceans of grief and fear and acceptance and disclosure, to meander, evaporate, fall back to the earth, and cycle until they remember the oceans where they began. Know that babies are born of a mother's tides, but those tides are sourced and need to be resourced, pulled back out, reclaimed by the oceans that origin them. Before time, before babies, before bodies. The ancestors of whales once walked on legs on land. These walking whales moved closer and closer to the water. In the water, their legs merged into flukes. The modern whale has only a trace of her old pelvic bone. So stay. Stay in the water till your fingers prune, till you grow so light and dizzy you think you might feel webbing growing between your fingers, your toes. Stay so long in the water you want only to swim in deeper and deeper, till there is nothing left of you that belongs to the land but a trace of pelvic bone. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Christina. We have all the virtual
Wow.
that was a perfect perfect reading to start Scribente with, just or this, given that that's what we are dedicated to, is
Yeah.
gathering women together. So I love it. Thank you so much. And now we're going to have Michele read. All right.
It was a wonderful reading. Thank you, Christina, and thank you, Elizabeth and Rachel, for this invitation to be a part of the panel of readers today. I'm going to read two pieces. One is from my debut poetry collection, Pearl, and then the second piece is a unpublished poem. But I get asked often about Pearl, like what is it about? Imagine a round table of women from Homer's Odyssey, and women from history, and then women from today, mothers and daughters, queens and maidens, goddesses and slaves. And they're just talking about life and life experiences. And moderating the discussion are two women, Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, and Phyllis Wheatley Peters, the first Black woman to publish a collection of poems. And so that's what Pearl is. It's just the swirling and blending of a variety of voices, women's voices. And so the poem that I'm going to read from Pearl, I was inspired to write it by an event, actually two events that happened almost 5 years ago to the day. One event happened in Central Park in New York City, and then the other event happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And as a mother of three, two sons and a daughter, I was wrought with grief that day. And I picked up the pen and I wrote this poem. It's called Anticlea. Anticlea is Odysseus's mother in the Odyssey. She is the queen of Ithaca, and she dies in the story of heartbreak after waiting for almost 2 decades, 20 years for her son to come home. She couldn't bear his absence anymore, and she died. Auntie Clea. I told him too much of anything is almost always a bad thing. Just because there are too many fish in the sea doesn't mean you should catch one for every day of the week, except Sunday, because one day 6 heads will scoop you up and eat you alive. This is not the moment I have been waiting for. Hades is a mother's hospital waiting room, a dreadful place where restless souls pace, where 20 minutes feels like 20 years, waiting for my son's return from bird watching, jogging, wandering while I sit waiting. Why don't you pick on someone your own size? I moaned, trapped inside one cave's soundproof walls. Bet this lawless monster swears nobody did this, contradicting iPhone witness and millions who heard my baby boy cry, choking out, "Mama, I can't breathe." I'm gonna read a second poem, a little bit lighter. This one is a pantoum, or it's my attempt at a pantoum, which is a type of poem where lines are repeated. So you're gonna hear some echoing going on. It's called alma mater, which is a phrase that we often associate with colleges and universities where we attended or graduated. But in Latin, alma mater means nourishing mother. Alma mater. My thumbs are not green, but my other children are. Thriving in the back of my home where walls are windows. I can't remember adding plant caretaker to my resume, but this mother always notices when leaves droop and frown. Thriving in my suburban home where walls are made of windows, my birds of paradise, snakes and palms, all transplant tropics, whose leaves, sometimes moody and sad, droop and frown, until I missed their shiny surface, soaked their roots with sweet banana water. My birds of paradise, snakes and palms, transplants from the tropics. Like my older children, I mark their growth, invisible notches on walls, reflecting how I missed their leaves, soak their roots with sweet banana water, filling this empty nest with the sights and sounds and smells of new life. Like my adult children, I mark their growth, invisible notches on walls, remembering like it was yesterday when I added plant mom to my resume, filling this empty nest with sights and sounds and smells of new life. Even though my fingers are not green, my other children are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were beautiful. Can't wait to talk about all of these. All right, let's turn it over to Jenny for our final reading before we start chatting.
Well, those were so beautiful. Thank you, Michelle and Christina. It's such a joy to read with you both. And thank you to Elizabeth and Rachel for inviting me. I decided to read for today something I haven't read in public yet. So I'm having fun here and taking a chance. My book is We Are Animals on the Nature and Politics of Motherhood. And I always find it hard to choose a selection because I'm really interested in nuance when it comes to motherhood, right? And really unpacking the complexity. And it's hard to capture that complexity in 5 to 7 minutes. But today I'm going to read a birth story. This seems like the right scene or group for a birth story. And my caveat here is the essay is called Birth Unmedicalized, and it's about the medicalization of women's bodies in childbirth and what it means to approach birth from a place of fear, as so many of us are trained to. And I in no way advocate for a particular kind of birth or birth experience, right? But this is my attempt to kind of unpack that relationship with fear and medicalization and women's bodies and birth. But this part is just the birth story, so it's more fun. My birth begins at 3 a.m. when I wake with a rock-hard uterus that softens and then hardens again. I have been waking with such Braxton Hicks contractions for days at exactly this time, so at first I do not think anything about them. I drink a glass of milk, get back into bed, and then when they continue, decide to take a bath, which has stopped stubborn Braxton Hicks contractions in the past. I fill the tub with warm water and keep the light off. My daughter sleeps across the house. My husband snores from the other room. I ease myself in, my belly so large that it pokes out of the water like an island. The contractions tighten and I breathe in and out, cringing sometimes from their strength. I cannot get comfortable in the tub. All is silent and my silent discomfort encloses me. I listen to the static of the house in the water a strange cocoon, neither comforting nor unsettling. When the contractions do not abate, I get out. I dry myself and walk into the kitchen, the contractions still coming, not constant, but stronger. Sometimes I grab the counter, arching my back and leaning in. I keep eyeing the clock, timing them. 5 minutes apart, then 10, then 2, then 5, then 9 again. Unnerving, frustrating. I walk around the house. The contractions begin to burn, a deep ember filling my back and belly. I can't think of anything during them, but I reach for a wall. Is this it, I wonder? I want to be sure, but I am not sure. It is only when they overtake me that I realize something is coming that I cannot stop. At 5:30, I wake my husband. I think I'm in labor, I say, a hand on my aching, burning belly, my lower back aflame. They've suddenly found their pattern, 5 minutes apart, maybe shorter. I've stopped looking at the clock and have just begun to breathe. The next 30 or so minutes are a strange film. My husband gets out of bed. Okay, I'll take a quick shower. You don't have time for a shower, I say, knowing somehow that this is urgent. My husband calls the doula. He calls the friend who said she'll watch our daughter. He scrambles around the house in his underwear, packing the last of the items in our hospital bag. The contractions come quicker. He calls the doula again. How long apart are they, she asks. They were 5, I say, now it's 3, maybe 2, and it's true. I'm on my hands and knees in the bedroom, arching my back. I crawl toward the bed and kneel. I bite into the edge of the mattress. I clench the mattress and the blankets during the contractions. I tell myself to relax, like Gaskin wrote, though during the peak of the contractions, I bite and press into the bed with a force that surprises me. I moan. I hardly made a noise during the birth of my daughter, but this time I cannot help it. I moan into the bed, into the night. My doula hears the moans on the phone and tells me later that from the sound, she knew I had already passed through the early and mid stages of labor. We need to get to the hospital, I say, almost pleading, though in between contractions, I'm thinking of my daughter. My friend is still a half hour away, and I don't want my daughter in the car with us, in the hospital with us, aware of my pain. I imagine her in the fluorescent lights of the waiting room, confused and scared. In short sentences, I tell my husband to call another friend who lives closer. He begins to panic, still in his underwear, still scrambling around. I need help, I say, as another contraction comes on, and I realize, I know, moaning again into the bed, that I am alone in this. Despite my carefully laid plans, despite my husband's presence, no one is here for me. But the sensations are familiar, and I recognize that too. I feel a pressure in my perineum that I recall from the birth of my daughter. He's coming, I say, now. The contractions wrap around my belly, and I moan into the bed as a force pushes down. I feel the force of it meet resistance from bone, from pelvis, and my water breaks, drenching my legs and the floor. He's coming, I say again, and I can sense the panic in my husband, my doula by now on speakerphone, talking to him, to us, though I am no longer paying attention. 2, maybe 3 more contractions, a push that I cannot stop. I feel the pressure, the something emerging, receding back in. I slip one leg out of my pants, and then the something emerging is fully emerging, and my husband kneels behind me, guiding the baby, more slippery than he expects, from my body to the floor. I turn, and there my son is, still connected to me by umbilical cord, a whitish being, scrunched, wrinkled, with white goop and red streaks, miraculously alive in the world. I scoop him up. I crawl into the bathroom, where I squat as the afterbirth slips from me. We debate what to do next, whether to try and drive to the hospital ourselves or call an ambulance. But despite the alarm I register on my husband's face, I do not feel rushed or panicked. On the contrary, I feel completely fine. This is the part I cling to now. I was fine. It was not the birth experience I expected. When is anything what we expect? It was not the birth experience I could have planned for, but I did it, and I did it without medication or interventions. In the seclusion of our home, I had the experience I had sought. Yet I have to fight for that story once others hear about my son's birth. You must have been so scared, people say. Everyone from the friends who text me or ask for the story over coffee, to the nurses at the hospital, which we went to later that morning. My father-in-law, in his Christmas letter that year, describes how things reached a critical moment. A colleague tells me, I heard it was an unideal situation. For a while, even my husband uses such terms. Those first few days, whenever I insist that everything went well, my husband grimaces. His own memories of panic, his own sense of a loss of control, and his own fear that our son wasn't crying loud enough overwhelm him. It will take weeks for him to soften to the experience of our accidental home birth and begin to recount his own story, not with fear, but with pride. All of their words flummox and aggravate me. My son's birth was not an emergency. It was not traumatic. I was not in dire need of medical attention. I was not even in need of saving. I push against the labels because they take away my own power and agency. I knew what position to be in. I had taken care of my body, and my body was capable. The fact that I wasn't surrounded by medical personnel did not make birth dangerous. The situation, in fact, never felt unsafe to me. I wasn't afraid. Rather, I was aware of my body and what I needed to do. Would my telling of the story be different if things hadn't turned out as well? If our son didn't breathe, or if the cord had wrapped around his neck or got stuck? Of course. A friend gently tells me that childbirth is traumatic, and based on one definition, a life-changing event that requires physical and emotional recovery, my friend is right. But why the word trauma? Why do we overlook the fact that, as Block reveals in Pushed, home births have been proven to be just as safe for low-risk pregnancies as hospital births, and instead assume it's life-threatening? Though certainly intense, certainly transformative, and certainly profound in a way that belies our ability to capture it in words, birth does not strip women of agency. It does not make them victims flat on their backs in a hospital bed, incapable of making healthy decisions on their own, and unworthy of respect and support. My body wasn't medicalized. It wasn't a series of numbers. It was quaking, tense, opening. It was a jaw on the mattress of a bed. It was power and thrust and force and blood. It was uninhibited and beautifully untethered. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you, all of you. I just, I feel like it's weird. I'm kind of in this like emotional state, and I feel like I was getting emotional during everybody's readings today. I don't know if anyone feels the same way. So I am going to open it. How are you feeling, Christina? You good? Okay. Before we get started, I'm gonna wait. Where can I want to put this link in there. You can get all of their books we have a bookshop at Scribente, or a storefront on Bookshop for Scribente, so that we can kind of collate all of our writers' work. And so you'll see all 3 of their books there. So if you want to get them, you can put them in your cart right now. Okay, I'm gonna kick it off with a question. And because Jenny, you went most recently and writing about childbirth, and I know Christina, I've read My Oceans, and you have also written about childbirth, and probably Michelle, maybe you have as well. But I'm curious about what is the power of writing about your birth experience or a birth experience? Like, tell us a little bit about why you felt inclined to write about it and what was so powerful about that experience. I've talked to a lot of other writer moms who, like, for them it's kind of therapy in a way, to process what they went through, and I think that's part of it, but I think that it's different for everybody, and so I'd be curious about from all of you.
Yeah, my book, We Are Animals, has two birth stories in it. It has the story of my daughter and then the birth story of my son. And I did find myself compelled to write about both experiences. And I think it's just because they're so intense, right? Which I expect is the case for anyone, no matter how that story unspools. And childbirth, in addition, definitely made me feel like my most animal self, more mammalian than I'd ever felt before. And it did feel like a death in many ways, right? So trying to describe and unpack and understand that experience, I needed words to do that, or to do my best to capture it and understand what I was experiencing and what was happening and what I was taking away from that.
Yeah, that actually just makes me think of, I feel like there's so many books and writings these days about really tapping into the animal nature of motherhood. Thinking of Night Bitch in particular. I don't know if you've all read that, but that's so I think that that's such a great way to put it.
I can jump in.
Yeah, I saw you unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I also have a piece called Four Circles, which is I break linear time because I feel like although Jenny, wow, I really dropped in that narrative drive, and like that was a wild ride. But in my piece, I definitely break four pregnancies that were all traumatic in different ways into segments of time. So like the first 8 weeks, and then 9, and then 10 weeks, and then 12, and then I keep moving through to the birth. And that piece was the first piece I learned to write through. And I you asked why, but I think like I don't think I had a choice. Like I did have to write through. And because I had a lot of prenatal depression during those years, and one of the very first paragraphs that exist in this book, not early in the book, but like that I wrote, one of the first paragraphs that I wrote of this book, was written, between two failed pregnancies and a period of prenatal depression. So, so I often say one of the birth stories of the book was depression and pregnancy. And then that Four Circles piece, I actually didn't have it in the first version of the book. And then when I went on submission, but then it kept talking to me at night and being like, put me in there, put me in there, I belong in there. And so I asked my editor and my agent, and they were like, yeah, let's put it in there. And it was interesting because then a lot of people were also like, can you make your book more narrative? And like in terms of like making things narrative, it kind of made sense to put the births of my children in the front of the book, but I didn't do that, and it just never felt right. So I put it in the center. But then I also should say that one of the shapes for my book was a spider web because it was born in many fragments. I think that Four Circles, you know, aligned my style writing for this book, which was fragmented. So I had a spider web as my first kind of book shape, and I only realized after the book was published, looking at a spider web, but the spider webs actually have four circles in the middle, and so it's funny how all the magic like comes together and these shapes all manifest themselves. But yeah, I do think all the other pieces, I didn't know it at the time, but they do orbit my Four Circles essay, just the way a lot of my life orbits the births of my children.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, it is like I mean, I've read your book, Christina, and that was a really powerful essay. And what I liked about it too is not really knowing exactly where you were in your like in the pregnancy and of whom. And so I just thought it was like it captured that, and also the feelings of the prenatal depression as well, which I can relate to so much. Yeah.
It's funny because I've been thinking about it lately because it's all written in present tense. It's the only one that's written in present tense. But that, like, especially listening to Jenny's story, I'm like, God, the birth stories are just so present tense. Like, can they be written any other way? I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Oh my
love
gosh.
Lindsay's comment in the chat saying women's birth stories are akin to men's war stories. And I read an article that was making that case too, and saying that the challenge of writing birth stories is the same as the challenge of writing war stories, where by the time you have perspective, that sense of immediacy has passed.
Yeah.
So the person most capable of writing the intensity of that experience isn't always the person who has perspective. And I thought about that a lot when writing this book, because I also struggled a lot with prenatal and postpartum depression with my son. And I wanted to write about that experience. And yet that meant a fragmented essay that other people often thought was too intense, right? So how could I honor that intensity and fragmentation while also constructing a narrative that people could access? It's a challenge.
Yeah.
Can I just poke in here that
Yeah.
the intensity and the, oh God, what did you just say? The fractured nature of it. To me, that's what was so gripping. That made it so gripping
Yeah.
because it's it's not a linear story, you know, that you can just tell. And I also like Christina saying it needs to be in the present tense.
Mhm.
I didn't read the article you're referencing, but I disagree. I mean, I'm 72. I had kids 40 years ago. No, 30 years ago. I had them old when I was old. Um, I'll never forget the two births ever.
Mhm.
I can go right there.
Mhm.
I think soldiers, you know, they don't want to go right there, right? Because it's a
Yeah.
whole different context.
I think it depends on the person though too. I mean, I know that so many people who've had very traumatic births that it really is like going back to that war experience. And yeah, but one person I know in particular had almost died during childbirth, and but writing about it was kind of therapy and was important for her to kind of reflect on the experience and the resiliency also that we have. Michelle, have you written about childbirth as well?
So I have, but I haven't written about my experiences. So um, it's really interesting to hear, Christina and Jenny, share. And I one of the poems, and I didn't read it, talks about how I am a very like private person. And so the way that I let my voice out is through my poetry. And so there are elements in there in the poems that are specific and personal to me, but more often than not, I'm trying to amplify other women's voices, other women's stories that haven't been told. And I just, I'm thinking, wow, I have not written about my experiences. And so that is something that I think I might try.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. Well, I mean, it's interesting that you say that yeah, I mean, I love that you express yourself through poetry. And in your first poem, Auntie Clea is what it was called. Even though it was through the voice of another mother, it's like you can hear you in there too, especially when you're kind of, and I think that, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, because I loved the way you did that, and that like, it's like, especially as you progress through, I hear you more than I do Auntie Clea. And so I think I just thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Auntie Clea is like a mother who's waiting for her son to come home from war, from fighting in a war. And Lindsay, your comment really struck me when you made that point about men in war stories. But for me, as a Black mom, anytime my daughter steps out into the world, I feel like they could be in a war zone. And so I identified with Auntie Clea in that regard. And so a lot of that language in the beginning about giving my sons advice, it's hidden and woven into the story of the Odyssey, but it is also something that I would say to them. And what's really interesting is I wrote a poem several years ago, before 2020, before the events involving George Floyd and Christian Cooper. I wrote a poem after Trayvon Martin and Freddie Gray, and there was a lot of hope in that poem. And in this poem, there's the hope. It's like the hope has dissipated, and so it's really interesting to see how it has impacted me and my voice. But yeah, I'm very private, and I use my poetry to kind of convey what I'm thinking and feeling. And it's interesting that I have not written about my birth experiences with my 3 children. And I'm wondering what that says about me and how I've kind of processed that. And they are adults now. But as many of you said, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah. Amazing. Also, I should, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Christina.
It's just so funny how the birth stories are so accessible as a woman to drop into. And then also how this husband running around in his underwear is also just like as a metaphor and quite physically like a reality. And how vulnerable it must be for them too, to be like, I'm quite disconnected to the experience. I don't know what other people's partners' experiences were, but it's just not accessible to them in general. Like, or I don't know.
Yeah, they have no idea.
Yeah. Did he ever get pants on too? Because I don't think he did. In this, like the story, he was always running around with his underwear.
So one of the other themes that has kind of come up with your readings, especially with Christina and Michelle's, is just women gathering and conversing. And Michele, I love that your poetry was one, from the perspective of one, well, slap two, if you're gonna count you, mothers, but it's your collection is a conversation. And so I am curious about why focus on the conversing or the gathering and the convening of women, and what goes into that. And I asked this too because that's exactly what we're dedicated to at Scrimente, like that, and that's why we created this, is because there is power in that. And so what does that mean in our writing as well?
Well, this goes exactly to Lindsay's point. For far too long, these stories have not been shared. They've not been told. In many cases, the stories have been muted and silenced. And I teach high school English, and for many years, I taught the Odyssey the traditional classical way. Odysseus is the epic hero. We just focus on him and all of his crowning achievements. And the more I became familiar with the text, the more I realized that he has a lot of help from women, but we don't hear their stories. Their stories are lost in translation. And so when COVID hit and the schools shut down, I was right in the middle of teaching the Odyssey. And I was taking a poetry workshop and decided I'm going to tell their stories, and I'm going to tell my stories, and I'm going to tell the stories of other women. And I just made a list, and after a few, I realized this is really just a roundtable discussion. And sometimes Calliope is moderating it, and then sometimes it's Phyllis Wheatley Peters, or sometimes it's me. And it's this blending of um, cultures and time periods and life experiences, older women, younger women, women who are mothers, women who are daughters. And these are just stories and voices that we don't often hear. And so Pearl is a celebration of those voices. It's a celebration of resilience, that the obstacles that we encounter in life, that they make us stronger. And as I'm trying to find the courage to amplify my own voice and tell my own story, I'm also giving time and space to those who've gone too long unheard.
I love that. I also should note just the timeliness of the poem that you read, given that it's the 5-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. And I also just think it's such a, that conversation too is like, and through the perspective, it's of the Odyssey, which is, I never, like, as you know, having read the Odyssey as a high school student, never would have put those together. And so I'll just note that your students are really lucky to have somebody to like really kind of make that connection between this very inaccessible feeling literature to today and ourselves. And I think that that is incredibly powerful. And it's like, oh, now I want to go back and read the Odyssey. Maybe. But I just, yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And I love that it's, you frame it as that conversation. I think that, I feel like that's how I'm going to read women's work now in general, is just like, it's a conversation with one another. Christina, how about you in the writing about women gathering? Like I remember that essay very uh deeply when I read it, or the listicle, and also because I love the form of it too. I think it's a really unique essay form. And yeah, so what was your motivation to write about that gathering?
Well, first, thanks for saying the form, because I think that was actually one of the harder parts of placing it, because it's actually, that was the essay that my agent picked the book for. She was like, I love this essay. I want more. And then one of the first things she did was she's like, let me submit this around and see if we can get anyone to pick it up and publish it. And no, like she submitted to some bigger magazines, and no one picked it up. And I'm like, it's because it's a listicle. Like no one, like lots of magazines say, right? Like, don't send lists, don't like, and they don't get that it's a literary listicle or whatever. I don't know, but I couldn't, I couldn't see it in any other form. And sometimes, forms just choose the piece in my mind. And then in regards to just, I don't know, I also battled with these, like, these repressed stories, these hidden stories too, because a physical assault on women is a theme in my book, and it still feels taboo, and it's definitely taboo, and then you just also can't talk about other people's stories. It's so sad because in these circles you hear the stories as they unfold, and so many of these stories are like practically unconscious because they happen to women who like blacked out or were too young to remember them. And you're close to enough women to like see it unfold and see them like not even being able to register, but talk about it. And like, and it's not your story to tell. And if it is your story to tell, do you want to tell it? So it's just so sad because it all gets repressed and buried. I do have one paragraph in this essay called Anatomy of a Seagull, where it's all in parentheses. It's like these are the stories I couldn't tell, and I had to get really general and be like, but like this paragraph frames my life and like how I raised my daughter. And like, and I don't even know if my husband's read it. He needs to, because I sometimes he's like, why does it have to be so feminist? And I'm like, I don't think you get it. Like, this is, like when, you know, 4 out of your 6 best friends have been sexually assaulted before the age of 12. Like, that's what informs your life. Like, that informs your stories. It informs how you move through the world. And so but I do think those that's what comes when in those circles. And even some of the book clubs that I've done, when people have brought up that piece and then like and start sharing, and like it needs to be shared, it needs to be talked about in safe spaces, or people need to have permission to release some of that and have it collectively held. And so I do think there's so much power in those spaces. And unfortunately, I feel like so many of us are so isolated. And like Jenny's talked a lot about this a lot, that like the period, that period after birth is just, it is so isolating on its own. And you're too busy to even think of like getting together with a few other women. And it's such a privilege when it can happen. And it requires so much privilege to make it happen. So it's, I don't know. I don't have any answers.
Yeah. Well, I know, and I mean, I think that, like, I know that Rachel and Carla and I have talked about this when we have our retreats, and not even just retreats, like even our virtual spaces. Like, there's something like magical that happens when women, when mothers especially come into a space together. Like, I even remember, like, just being at the table at AWP in this, like, this highly lit, like big, like conference center. Yet, like, I had so many deep conversations in the 5 minutes I had with people at the table, like, these like confessions that don't come out. It's not the same with other people. And it's something that, when we started Scribente, we're like, well, we know we need the space. We didn't realize how magical it would be until like we had these events, and it like just, it's the people coming together is really what makes it. And we can't put our finger on it other than that. It's the
Yeah.
magic of mothers.
Yeah. This last book club I went to, I mean, it went into some wild directions that I don't think it could have ever, we were talking about past lives and like all these, like, and it just went into all these, I think people just felt safe to go anywhere they needed to go. And yeah.
Well, and I think that's why sharing birth stories like we've been talking about, right, is so important, because women don't often feel safe to share those stories and to share what they've experienced. I was at a book club a couple of months ago, and I was talking a bit about my experience with prenatal depression, and one of the women in the book club, who I think she was in her late 70s, just started to cry and said, I have never admitted this to anyone, but I also struggled with prenatal depression, and I never thought anyone would understand, and I've never shared that before, right? So she's gone her whole life not having that community to talk to, or feeling like she'd be in a group of people who would understand. And one of the things I was really interested as a mother, and a mother who's writing about motherhood, is the ways we silence ourselves, right? Or the ways we silence ourselves even amongst other mothers for fear of judgment, right? Where, someone has had a different kind of experience and they're not going to understand, and they might judge me for my experience as a mother, or these thoughts I've had or emotions I've had as a mother. And, just how can we break out of that?
Yeah, and I think so much of it has to do with our bodies too, like like the changes and things that are happening to our bodies, from abortion to miscarriage to childbirth, and now like perimenopause and menopause. Like, I feel like, I talked to my other friends going through perimenopause, and we're like, did our moms talk about this? Because no, I didn't hear anything about this growing up, because it was not talked about. And I feel like we're kind of in this unique place where there are more safe spaces to talk about our bodies and what's happening to them. But I feel like we kind of have to like use code words at first to make sure that it's a safe space. Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions? Shay, Lindsay, Emily, is it Emily that's on here? Emily, Rachel, or do any of you have questions for each other? Yeah,
I have a
Christina.
question for Michele about we talked about being a very private person and then having this book out and how you're navigating that.
Yeah. I'm just doing it. I think I just stopped thinking about it, and I'm just doing it. I didn't have social media ever. until the book was about to come out. And someone said, if you want people to be able to find you and find your book, you're going to have to get social media. When I say I am a private person, it's like through and through. And so I don't even think I'm really thinking about all of the things and ways that I am just out there now. But I think what's fueling me is when people hear my poems and they come up to me and um, they have a kind word, or they are moved emotionally. Maybe they're inspired to write their own story. That's what's really kind of keeping me going. But I'm here now, so but
At
yes,
your
it's
ninth
my
event
ninth
this
event
month.
this month. So yeah, it's um it's been a lot, but I think when the school year ends and things kind of slow down a little bit, I'll be able to process. Um, but yeah, I'm really proud of the book. I was not planning to write this collection. I've been working on a novel for a really long time, and I just needed a break from it. And a friend encouraged me to take a poetry class where I had to have a poem, and I was teaching the Odyssey. And now 2 years later, I have a whole collection of poetry. I just
Oh
didn't
my
see
gosh, so
any of
you're
that.
new to poetry?
I'm new to
Oh my
everything. I've
Well,
been
I would
putting
never have guessed.
all of my energy into teaching. This is my 23rd year in this classroom that I'm in right now. And I've been helping young people, grow their voices and find or rediscover a love for reading, which sometimes gets destroyed somewhere between middle school and high school. That's where I've been focused. Did not have any of this on my bingo card. So
You're an inspiration to English teachers everywhere.
Yes.
Seriously. You're like the Mr. Holland's Opus of English teachers.
yeah, so
That's amazing.
thank you.
That's
Thank
so
you.
amazing. Any other questions?
No, but I do have to go because I have to go speech therapy. So mom stuff.
Did
But
your
thank you
child
so
get
much.
did your child get dressed?
Yeah, he did get dressed, and I now have to change this one. But so I just want to say, bye. Thank you for sharing. It was lovely to be here, and
Bye,
I'll see
Shay.
you guys
Thanks for
around.
coming.
Bye.
My gosh, Milo's getting so big.
6 months next month.
What? Lindsay, do you have any questions? And Emily too. We have Emily is on here.
Well, I don't know that I have questions. I just have kudos. I love this group, and I may be one of the rare grandmothers that's part of the group, but
Not
I'm
rare,
still a
rare.
mother,
Rare.
I have boys. See, I call them boys, they're in their 30s. But I love all three of the pieces that were shared today. I just they all brought me to tears, because they're very profound. And Michelle, you were talking about being a private person. I've not only been private, but I had a, you know, bizarre childhood stuff. And so I have like repressed memories. So for me, it's been very hard to pull stuff out and then wonder, how might I share any of this with the world? Do I need to? Does the world need me to? All of that stuff. And so bravo to you for doing it a lot sooner than I am doing it in my now, I guess it's my 8th decade. I hate saying that because it sounds like 80. I'm only 72, but I just love that you're doing this. And I don't, I'm not trying to change the subject or raise the subject or anything, but in this current time, it's so important that women and people of color and good people share their thoughts, their philosophies, their beliefs, their principles, their stories with the world, because it's all being overshadowed by this garbage. And what I've been finding, I sat next to a gentleman at the Gaithersburg, just by coincidence, he had his author's table next to mine, and he had written this incredible book about an African escaped slave community in Brazil in the 1600s, and I started reading his book. I couldn't help myself, and it was so healing, and at the same time as I was reading his introduction about well, God, I mean, it's about a lot of things, but we'll call it race for sake of time. I thought, God, somebody else needs to write this book about women because it's so similar that women need to be liberated and empowered, and there's so many constraints on women, including women being murdered. It, goes to the full extreme that it does with the Black people that have been killed in so many different awful ways. So I was really moved. I mean, Christina, your piece evoked so much for me. I have been to I'm amazed that I don't cry a lot, but every time I go to a women's writing retreat, and I just came from one where there are 24 women, and their stories. I mean, people were telling stories they had never shared with anyone in their entire lives. And these were women all around my age. It blew my mind. A lot of them were about being a mother and motherhood and losing children and um, just on and on. And just, for a woman, because women really are different from men. I mean, it's a generalization, but they do open up, especially in the water. I love that you chose that as the context to be in water. And I loved the parallel with whales. So I'm going to go order your book. It's extraordinary.
Should order them
Thank
all
you.
right
That's
now.
some of the first. I haven't shared that piece with many people, and it's late in the book, and so I haven't gotten any
Oh no,
feedback.
it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. And your respect to not divulge, identifying whatever, but we can relate to so many of the things that you string along, not in a list, by the way. And Jenny, I have written a memoir, and I started writing far too much about my birth stories because in my generation, once you had a baby, you moved on. And in real life, you do anyway, because then you've got this baby, and what the hell do you do with the baby? Nobody talks about that, right? They talk about pregnancy, they hint at labor, but nobody talks about what you're going to do for the rest of their life, or the rest of your life.
Mhm.
And I thought the way you described it was just so, I was right there with you. And it was a beautiful encapsulation of a completely natural birth. And sure, women die in childbirth. It's unfortunately a relatively common thing, especially among Black women for many reasons. But the beauty of that and the beauty of you, I mean, I can't really separate out you and your experience and your writing. So just bear with me, but you captured it in a way that was really generous to share that with everybody.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, one thing that I thought about too was that there's I feel like there's I don't know if it's a stereotype or it was or is somewhat taboo to write about motherhood in general. And I think that like uh writers earlier writers who were mothers had to really stay away from the topic of writing motherhood because and whether it was society or themselves holding them back from it, and I think we're in this special era where there's a lot more space to write about motherhood, to write about the experience of motherhood, about being a woman. And I think that the three readings were such a perfect way to encapsulate different. I mean, the experiences were so different, but also we can relate and like feel something similar in each one. And so I just think we're in like a great time where we, at least, I don't know if maybe the the current political time is really the best for that, but we persist and we still are writing about our experiences as mothers and motherhood. And um I just love that there's so much more. I do wish there was more about like perimenopause. I know that all four kind of the one is like perimenopause, and I probably shouldn't put this on the record, but I didn't really like it, and I had a really hard time with the book, and so I was like, I need another book about perimenopause. And
Maybe you need
so,
to write it.
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see. I feel like I'm still in just the beginning that it's like kind of like not being able to really write about childbirth right away. But yeah, I think we're in a special time in that. I think we might wrap up a little early unless anybody else has any other anything else they'd like to say. This has been so lovely, and I think I didn't realize it, but exactly what I needed at this moment. I was I was just like, it's May and it's wild and it is like my brain is everywhere. And so to have this moment to like sit and be in space with other women and hear their stories and also reflect on my stories feels like such a privilege. And I don't know if I realized how much I needed it until we were here together. And it's kind of amazing that we can do that in a virtual space. Because yeah, I don't know, it just is exactly what I needed. Yeah, Jenny.
I just wanted to say one thing, since Michele and Lindsay have brought up being private a fair amount. In reality, I'm an incredibly private person. So I always find it ironic that I write creative nonfiction and personal essays at that, which is the most unprivate, right? So yeah, if you find yourself doubting yourself because you're private, I would say, I think we all feel that way sometimes, and don't let that hinder you from exploring what you want to explore.
100%. And I'm deeply private too. That's why I was looking for advice, because turns out my book is almost probably more memoir than anything else. And what have I done? And I run into some people who are like, oh, I get you now. Like now I write a lot about introversion too. And so people are like, oh, I'm an introvert too. And now we can be awkward together. And I'm like, oh, that's nice.
I feel like so many writers are introverts.
Yeah.
And so you find that in the, yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, Jenny and Christina. I have been working in fiction and poetry, and CNF is way, way, way over here. But after hearing both of you read today, perhaps might try. But thank you for creating such a wonderful and welcoming environment. It's not easy. I know I teach English and I talk poetry and fiction all of the time, but when it's your own writing, it's something altogether different. So I'm really grateful to Scribente and
thanks.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, like I said, we love the space. It's like it's the people who come to us too that like really makes this incredible experience. And so for those of you listening later, and also Lindsay, I know you know all this too. We have opportunities to gather in person at our retreats, which I mean, Rachel and Carla and I are like furiously planning those, and it's so stressful. But then when we leave, we're like, that was like, how did we do it again? Like it just like is like this most magical experience. And I also was like, as you all were reading, I was like, we should do like an anthology with all of our writers. I really do, Rachel. We'll just, putting it on video recorded record that I said it out loud.
Oh, good. Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Because I just like, I mean, how cool would it be to have just all these voices, kind of like Michele, like that conversation, this round table of women and mothers talking to each other, and I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
That rainbow image was beautiful.
So I was at the Gaithersburg Book Festival over the weekend for Grit and Gravity, which is their 11th anthology. It's run by a group called Grace and Gravity out of DC, and it's women writers, and it's fiction and CNF. And so I got my first piece of fiction published in this latest anthology, but they would be a great like place to
Partner in
look
that.
to think about how, you know, you could put together an anthology of writers writing about, you know, the various stages of motherhood. That would be fantastic.
I love, okay, let's talk offline and then we can, yes. Oh, I'm getting excited. Another thing to add to our plates that are so, well, thank you everybody so much. You can find out about Scribente Maternum at scribentematernum.com or writelikeamother.com. It takes you to the same place. Like I said, we have 3 retreats in the next year and it's they're all just incredible. We're trying to balance, I mean, the international ones obviously geographically far away, but we're trying, the US ones, we're trying to balance out where they are geographically so that and we're doing more now, 2 domestic ones a year, which is which is new for us, and so we're excited. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. This was just really a pleasure and exactly what I needed for and maybe what we all needed for this moment. So, and happy Mother's Day, really, since this is our Mother's Day reading.
By the way, Elizabeth, I am proof perimenopause will pass.
Okay.
There is life after menopause, and it's quite good.
Yeah, I mean, it's less of like passing through, just being like, what is happening? Like, is this
You've gone
perimenopause?
temporarily crazy. It's okay. Just listen to Viola Davis's piece on perimenopause.
Okay, I will. I will.
Perfect.
Thank you, Lindsay. All right. Rachel, do you want to stop recording and then
Yeah.
I'll just chat as this the we don't have to have our chatter be